Hi friends, Mindy here. Today I'm going to be creating a journal using the DIY kit from Bythewell4god. This released alongside the new devotional called Come Away. As far as I know, the last time I checked there were still kits. Both the devotional and this DIY were still available. So let me just show you everything that you get. You get your cover pieces, your front and back, and your spine. You get a sheet of Tyvek. This is a really strong fibrous paper. If you've gotten like things shipped to you, sometimes it will come in this mailing envelopes. Really, really strong. It's just going to be a really easy way to kind of add strength and support to your spine, just so that it can withstand like the opening and closing of the journal. It's a great product. I've used it before in other journals, especially when you're using three separate pieces. A lot of times I'll do a journal that's, you know, a full box already, but this is just great and it's really flexible. This piece is Craft Text, and this is like a fabric paper. It's we've used this before in a journal cover a while back. And then of course you have your handles. So this is made to look like a little suitcase. And then you can use this craft text piece if you want to. You can color it, you can coffee dye it, you can do all kinds of things with it. But then you could make those little corners that come on a suitcase. It's the intention for this little piece that they included. They just thought that would be a fun little addition. Of course, you can use it however you want. I have some different ideas for it. You could use it as a closure, all kinds of things that you can do. This guy's really the limit with it. It does, you know, you can paint on it and all those kinds of things. So that's what I will be doing with mine, is actually cutting this up, but you could definitely use it for the corners. And then of course you get your file folders. You also get the twine to bind them into the spine, and then a little button for a closure. I ended up not using the button for this journal, but I will use it somewhere else. But it's just a really simple process to add these file folders using this twine binding method. And then there's another piece that you can get, or that comes with the kit here, the little yellow and white baker's twine. And then there's this cute ribbon and just some other fun ribbons that you can use to decorate your journal. But you can use this as your closure if you wanted to as well. There are other videos out there. Taryn has done one already. And there are pictures on the By the Well Instagram of Lori's. So just to give you some ideas. So I'm going to just do this how it was kind of in my mind to do. But I did want to show you, there are 8 file folders that come with this. And so if you wanted one file folder for each day, obviously that's not enough for the 14-day devotional, but really it's designed so that you could do kind of 2-page spreads. So you'd have, you know, 1 page here, and then when you opened it up, you'd have this second entry there. But you may not want, you know, to have to deal with the 2 colors. For some people that might, you know, be difficult to kind of marry those 2 sides together. So there's other ways that you can do that. And this the twine binding method is really good because you can add other things in there. So you could even use these smaller file folders and add them into the twine. You could add other signature. You could do really anything that you wanted to. You could even make a little signature out of one of these file folders and add several sheets of paper in there. Really all kinds of things you can do. I have so many ideas. It's hard to get it all into one video, but for me, I'm just going to bind these in the 8 total that are here, and then I will add in whatever, if I decide to use this journal. I actually was planning on working through the Come Away devotional in a different way altogether, and then I saw the DIY. So I'm just going to go ahead and assemble it at any rate. So I'm going to start with the bones of this, with the spine piece, the 2 covers, and the piece of Tyvek. So for me, I am using some scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive for most of what I am doing to cover this. It's a really, really strong double-sided adhesive. So I want to use this. Sometimes liquid glues, you can see the line depending on the paper that you're using to cover. And for the technique that I want to do on the cover, a liquid glue would just not work. So this is going to be kind of my best bet. I didn't want to get a lot of liquid adhesive on these chipboard pieces either. So I'm just starting out with kind of lining this up as close to center as possible. I didn't measure it or anything. You certainly could if you wanted to. It's a long piece, so you'll have plenty. And then I'm going to burnish that down really well. Anytime you're using a double-sided adhesive, burnishing it is a good idea because it helps get rid of like all the air bubbles and everything. So I am lining up my spine pieces or my cover pieces with the spine. And whenever you have a cover that is the 3 pieces, especially when you have this thicker book board, you really want to make sure to give yourself a little bit of space in between the pieces. So a rule of thumb is that you want to give yourself as much space as like the width of the chipboard. Not all chipboard is equal, but you want to be able to make sure that it folds. So one way that's kind of easy to do that is just use one of them as a placeholder, and then you can just kind of push the next one up to it. And then that kind of gives you a rule of thumb. There are actually bookbinding tools that you can use to kind of get even measurements like that. But this technique works just fine for me. And then I just kind of eyeball the other piece because you can kind of see that you're getting the same section, the same distance apart. And so on the inside, I added some more of that double-sided adhesive. And now I'm just adding, finishing wrapping this Tyvek around to the inside. Whenever I'm wrapping around, whether it's paper or fabric or anything, I always like to kind of roll the paper or the spine, excuse me, I like to roll the book text like up onto the edge. It just gets a really good finish for the corners and everything. And so that's what you saw me do there. I was just kind of rolling it up and then moving it around. So this is where, if you wanted to use the paper that came with the devotional or, alongside the devotional, this, you could do that, or other scrapbooking paper, pattern paper that you have. And then you would just kind of wrap that around, similar to what I'm going to be doing, but you'd have to do it in separate sections if you are using some of that Bythewell4god paper, obviously, because it's not going to cover the entire piece. But I am going to be doing a little bit different of a cover. So I'm going to go ahead and cover the entire journal in the scrapbook.com adhesive. And I am using this brown packaging paper. And then I'm just crumpling it up so I get a really nice kind of distressed feel to it. I don't want it to necessarily, I'm trying to mimic an old leather worn beat up suitcase. And so this was just the best way that I could think to do it. So I'm going to start, you can see I've already covered this with all of that adhesive. I'm going to start in sections. I have this piece cut, larger than I need, and I'm just going to work section by section because I'm going to go through and I'm going to use my bone folder, the flat side of it, and really press that down. I don't want necessarily a ton of wrinkles and those kinds of textures, but I do want it to look worn, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to go section by section all the way across and smooth out the wrinkles. Just make sure everything is really well adhered. I'm going to go over that with my bone folder, and then I'm going to go around now and trim off a little bit of the excess because you just don't need that much bulk like when you're wrapping it onto the inside. So I'm just going to go around and trim that, and then I will trim the corners as well, just kind of taking a notch out of there. This is super thin packaging paper, so it's not really that big of a deal with this one, but with other papers, that is really helpful so you don't have so much bulk in the corners. So I've added a strip of the inch size scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive all the way around. And then as I'm doing these pieces, you'll see this is what I was talking about, where you kind of roll it up on its edge. I did add just a little bit of liquid adhesive as well, just to make sure that everything was glued down, because I knew that my piece was just a little bit wider than my double-sided adhesive. And so I wanted to also make sure that that paper was really well adhered around the edge. So you can see when I'm rolling it here. And it's always a good idea whenever you're wrapping a book cover to do opposite sides. So if you're starting at the top, then you want to do the bottom and then move to the short sides. So that's exactly what I did. Just followed that same process all the way around. If you've seen any of my videos before, that's a very common way for me to cover a journal. So the next thing that I'm going to do is the part that's going to really make this look and feel a little bit more leather-like. And so I'm starting off with a coat of matte medium. This is just going to seal everything down. and give me a non-porous surface to work with. I do even do this on the inside here. Not really as necessary, but I knew that I was going to want to keep that on the inside as well. And then here is where I lost some footage. I thought I was recording and I wasn't. So the white that you see is a watered down gesso, and I just applied it with a paintbrush, like a wash of that gesso, and then I came back through and removed it with a wet paper towel just in areas. I wanted to give it kind of that worn leather look, like I said. And you just, you know, kind of do that to your own taste. You can also do that with another color of paint, a brown or a black. I've certainly done that before, but I wanted to kind of keep this just a little bit lighter to contrast with some of the other things that I was planning on doing. So then after that was done, I added another layer of matte medium, which wasn't necessary, but I wanted to do it because wasn't quite at that texture that I was looking for. So that extra layer of matte medium just really helped. So now I'm going to add in just a little bit more of this kind of aged look to this I'm going to use my archival ink. I'm using that because it's a permanent ink and I can do that over the matte medium and it won't wipe off. And so I just went around and just kind of distressed the edge, added a little bit of color back into my journal there. And that was in ground espresso. I can't remember if I said that. So this is kind of what this is going to look like with my little handles. And I love that they're basically already the same color, but I wanted to give them some contrast. So what I'm going to do is use my embossing dauber and some of the scorched timber embossing glaze. And I'm going to cover these handles. And what I ended up doing is just doing a coat of this, and I stuck my finger on accident into the wet embossing. And so I was like, well, I'll just go back and add a little bit extra. And I did that. And then when I did that, it was just a happy accident. It just got a little bit darker and like more aged looking in some of the areas. So then I went back and like just added little bits and pieces of that extra embossing powder, and it just gave it a more worn look. And so then I did that to both handles, but the front and the back, because you're going to see them obviously when it's open. And now I need to adhere them, or, you know, attach them to my little journal. So I did use a ruler just to make sure that I got them in the same place. And I'm using my little We Are Memory Keepers crocodile to punch those holes. And then once I did that on the first one, I used that as the template for the second one. I marked it, punched the holes, and then I used the holes that I punched for the first side. I just lined this up. You certainly could measure. I did not. I just lined it up where I thought it looked good, centered-ish, and then I marked on the journal itself where those holes were going to line up. And then I punched those holes, and I'm using, these are the long fasteners from Tim Holtz. You want the long ones. These are just basically brads that have a longer leg on them, because I'm going through basically 2 layers of that book board, and I needed to make sure that it was going to be long enough. Some brads have really short, I can't remember the word for that, but the little legs on them are shorter, and so these are the long ones that I'm using. And then I just lined up that back piece and did the same thing. I kind of lined the front one up with the back, and then used the holes to mark, and then ran those brads in there. And then I added some washi tape over the brads. It's really not necessary because it's getting covered up with this blue paper, but it just makes me feel better so they don't like poke through. I don't know that they would, but I don't know. It made me feel better to just add the washi tape. I always do that with a closure like that. So I took this paper that looks almost like linen, and I measured it for my journal for the inside cover, just leaving a little bit of a border. And then I marked it, and I'm trimming them both at the same time so they're exactly the same size. And then I'm going to cover the back of each of those with that same double-sided adhesive. I also distressed these just to kind of keep with the theme that I had going on here. And then I'm just going to line these up where just trying to get an idea. I want to make sure that they overlap just a little bit in the center. But I also want to make sure that there's an even border all the way around. So I'm just kind of lining those up, and then I'm going to remove the adhesive here on that one corner, line everything back up again, and I'm I'm going to just press down in that one corner, and then I will take off the rest of the release paper on that one side. I just wanted to make sure that, you know, at the top and the bottom, everything was kind of evenly spaced. And I didn't, that double-sided adhesive sometimes, like I said, is really strong adhesive. And so you only get one chance with it, really. So I removed those pieces, burnished everything down again, and then I will do the same thing with this other side. I will say, if you decide to do this with liquid adhesive, one of the things that is really helpful to do is just to make sure that your glue dries before you do this next part of like the folding in the center in the spine. That it will help it so that it doesn't wrinkle as badly. I'm not going to have that problem because I'm not using a liquid adhesive, but if you do use a liquid adhesive, that's just a trick to keep it from just getting a wrinkle. So this paper is a really strong paper, and so it's really important. I always take my bone folder here and just gently kind of work this into the spine because I don't want this paper to tear or to crack. And so you could try to score it ahead of time. I just find this to be easier. I'm just using the edge of my bone folder there, just going back gently a few times, and then just kind of working the spine a few times to get it the way that I want it so that it will fold. So this twine binding method that I use for this type of journal starts out with a piece kind of on the outside. I try to leave that long. I'm actually using a different twine than what was in the kit, but I just wanted this particular color. And then I'm just wrapping it around however many times, as many signatures as you have, if that makes sense. So I have 8 file folders, so I'm just wrapping it around so that there's 8 strands on the inside, and then I'm going to trim off the excess and leaving myself a good sized tail. So I have a tail that's coming up from the bottom and a tail that's coming down from the top on the outside of the journal. So you could certainly just tie this right here, but I like to first just cross them and then take the one that's on the left, and I stick it underneath all of those strands. So you can see I'm using my bone folder to make that a little bit easier. Just sliding that one now all the way so that it comes out on the right side. And then I am going to tie that here. And what that does is it just brings everything together in a nice little knot right there. And just kind of gathers everything together in a really cute way, I think. So, and then once I have done that, then I'm just going to tie a knot here, and then I will make a little bow. And I'm just going to leave those long until I decide if there's anything else that I want to add to those. I probably won't, given that it's like the bottom of a suitcase, but I'm not quite sure yet. So I want to give myself the options. So then basically now all you have to do is slide your file folders in there, and it's ready to go. This is basically the bones of this journal. So after I added all of the file folders, I decided to do some decoration to the front of my little suitcase here. I used the craft text that was in the kit, and I took some different inks and dyed it to this color, and then I cut it into 1/2-inch strips, added these little brads. These are Tim Holtz brads. I added some photo corners here. I also created a little hinge with another piece of craft text. This is actually one that I had in my stash from another project because I didn't have enough of this one and I wanted a wider closure here. And so this is another Tim Holtz piece. I cannot remember what this closure is called, but it just screws in from this side, and then this piece just literally screws onto it. And then I did the corners, and then on the back, in hindsight, if I would have thought about this closure before, I would have put these brads all the way through the chipboard as it is, and just have them through the craft text. So this is just glued down with a really strong adhesive. But that just makes up my closure. And then I gave myself a couple holes here so that as my journal grows, if I need to, I can move to this outer one. And then I gave myself enough room even that if I need to punch a third hole here, I can do that as well. But I wanted to just give myself space for my little journal as it grows. And then this is what it looks like when all of the file folders are attached, and then I will just work through this. And like I said, one of the things I like about this system is that you can take this out and work on it and put it back in if you want to. You can add things through this string. In other journals that I have done for my flower letters journal, one of the things that I have done is occasionally added string into it to add another signature, which is certainly an option. And basically what I do is just take that same baker's twine and I thread it through here and underneath this knot, like below it, and then tie it around on the inside, and you can't tell that it wasn't part of the original thing. So there are ways to even expand this further, but I think that's it. I did not do all of the filming of the dyeing the craft text and all of that. That was a little bit of a long process, just trying to get it to the color that I wanted, as you can tell by my hands. Got quite inky in that process. But this is my little journal. So there's just another different way that you can work through it. Again, if you don't want to have a journal that looks like a suitcase, you could certainly just, you know, leave off the handles and all, you know, and just do a traditional looking journal with this kit. But I just thought I would show you how I decided to decorate mine. If you liked this video, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and until next time, bye.